let's get started. Hello. Good to meet you all. So my name is Simon A. I am the co-founder and chief product officer of Starbutter AI. We build AI voice assistants that help people pick financial products like credit cards, mortgages, insurance. So just to give you a little bit about my background, I worked for Fortune 500 companies on the client side, and then I worked with them on the agency side, and essentially built digital acquisition campaigns for these companies. And now I build virtual assistants that are digital acquisition focused, and that's their job. They acquire customers online. So I'm going to get a little bit into our journey of kind of how we started, and then take you through what's really relevant to the bottom line of businesses and marketers. So we began 2 years ago where voice assistants were only available on smart speakers. So you had Alexa, you had Google Home, and it wasn't even available on Google Assistant on the phone device. And then Google comes along and offers Assistant on the phone, and now you have a multimodal experience where you have not only voice interaction, but you have a screen as a supplement that people can actually interact with. So I call this the credibility slide, just so you know I know what I'm talking about, or think I know at least. We're in the financial vertical. We've won the largest number of awards by anyone from Google. They've given us 4 awards, the best voice assistants on their entire platform. We have the most number of financial bots on the Alexa platform, the highest ranked ones. We won the Startup Innovation Spotlight Award at LeadsCon in New York, and we're being featured by Money 2020 in a couple of weeks back in Vegas again. And just to give you a sense, we're consumer focused, so we build and own our own bots. We're free to the end user, but we partner with financial companies who want to offer their products to these users. We were also featured by Google I/O this year. They've flat out told us that we're pushing their technology more than anyone else, and so we're the most mature developer on their platform. We also lead the largest voice developer community in the country, and as a result of that, work really closely with Google as they're building out these tools. We work closely with Google and Amazon, and you want to do that if you're in a space like this. You want to, when you're next to this giant elephant and your little ant, you want to shake hands, be friends, and be very friendly because they could squish you. So in terms of what we'll cover in this session, I'm going to give you a broad overview of what's going on in the voice space, and then I'm going to go into some really tactics of what people are doing that has just been fantastic from what we've seen, because there's a lot of hype out there, and I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation, but really narrow it down to ones that are actually making a difference for businesses. And then to tell you the things you absolutely must know if you think about or thinking about a virtual assistant or voice assistant for either your own companies or your partner companies. So this is the most compelling stat by far. Right now, 23% of all mobile searches are in voice. And Comscore and Google predict that that's going to go to 50% as early as 2020. 50% in about a year and a half. Half of all mobile searches. So essentially a tsunami is coming, right? The behavior is there. People are talking to their phones. And it's a massive opportunity for a major shift of how any marketer, any CMO, any company does their digital experiences. And voice blew up last year. So we went from 12 million voice-enabled devices to over 500 million. 81% of that over 500 million is phones, and the rest is smart speakers, IoT, other devices that you can talk to. So massive shift just last year to now. There's a big study done by Capgemini. If you don't know them, they're one of the largest data firms internationally, huge data firm. They did a 5,000-person study to see why is it that people are talking to these virtual assistants more than visiting a website? Why do they like them more? And the number one result that came up was that they're just more convenient. Like, why do I have to go on your website and figure out where you put things and find the answer to my question when I can just ask a virtual assistant and it just tells me? So all of these other parameters, and the list is very long, all come back to convenience. The other thing that the study found is that people prefer talking to virtual assistants more than human beings. Think about it. Do you enjoy spending 20 minutes of your lunch hour on the phone trying to get an answer from a company? Whereas you could have a virtual assistant that you trained really, really well, hard to do with humans, and it, very straight to the point, it greets you, it answers your question, and you're done. It doesn't ramble, beat around the bush, it doesn't pressure you, it doesn't judge you, it just answers your question. And the other thing we were seeing with voice is that it's a highly, highly sticky channel. So that people who are using it tend to use it very much and can't think of going back to a time where they didn't have it. What was the last device we talked about that way? It was a cell phone. Same thing with voice, that's what's happening. And as they start using it, it starts becoming a part of their daily routine. So another major study by Gartner, and basically in this study, Gartner reported that by 2021, just in a couple of years, early adopter brands that essentially set up virtual assistants on their websites can easily see a 30% increase in revenue of their products. And that in a couple of years, again by 2021, half of all the monies that is going to creating mobile apps is going to be pushed to virtual assistants because they're just that much more powerful. So I'm going to now get into considerations, things you have to think about in terms of, where to build an assistant, where can it live, how can it respond to people as you potentially consider this for your strategies or your partner company strategies. So there's a spectrum. And the gamut is you have voice only on one side and you have text only on another side. And AI assistants can live in both places and in between. So for instance, voice only would be a smart speaker, right, that doesn't have a screen. It's just a conversation. On the very right-hand side, text chat would be like a Facebook Messenger, where a lot of AI agents are being built on the Facebook Messenger platform because they have AI capabilities, and that's just the chat experience. Now, Facebook says that they're going to add a smart speaker, and so you're going to be able to talk to it. And then in between, you have things like Google Assistant. So if you have an Android device, if it's a fairly recent model, it will have Google Assistant available through the home button. You can talk to it, just like Siri was for Apple. And if you have an Apple device, you can, an iPhone, you can access Google Assistant through the mobile app. Important note to know between Siri and Google Assistant on Alexa. So Siri is 5-6-year-old technology. Siri was also overpromised and underdelivered. When Siri says, how may I help you, she should really say, here are the ways I can help you, right? She comes with a lot of baggage. There's a lot that she cannot do. And Google Assistant, play with it. It will blow your mind. Google, if you look at the CEO's essays from early on in college, Google's core is artificial intelligence. That's what they're grooming themselves for. So if they're going to knock everybody else out of the park, what's going to be interesting is who the second player is. So maybe it's Amazon, but the disadvantage Amazon has is that it's not on phones. Phone is such a powerful device. So if Siri opens up its platforms to developers who can build tools on top of it, it could become powerful. My point is, go play with Alexa, play with Siri, play with Google Assistant, and make your own conclusion. You will see how much better one technology is over another. So the other thing you have to think about, besides the platform that you're on, is the type of virtual assistant that you build and what its capabilities are. So the thing you have to think about here is what your KPIs are. What are the KPIs you care about that make a difference to your business outcomes? So on the very left-hand side, there is no natural language processing, no machine learning, no deep learning. That's like a mobile app, basically. The virtual assistants that look that way are very similar to mobile apps. If that's what you need, maybe stick with a mobile app. On the very right-hand side, you have natural language processing, machine learning, deep learning, and that's where I have Optimus Prime up here. Essentially, what happens there is, you have an AI agent that starts out as a little puppy, right? Initially, it's young. It's not really listening to you very well. It doesn't know that much. It needs training. It leaves surprises everywhere, right? And you have to give it a lot of attention. And by attention in this case, it's data and training. That's at the core of AI, really good data. And then you train it, and then it becomes an adult by some set point. And that depends on how much data you give it and how much you train it, et cetera. So that's where the powerful stuff is being built. Things that can grow and learn from your user so that they can answer almost any nuanced question. Because oftentimes with AI agents, they'll do a really great job of answering some simple questions, but if you build that tail end, you can answer at least 80% of the questions, and then 20% where the responses are really nuanced, and you can hand that off to a human being. And then you have obviously the spectrum in between. So if you go on the far right-hand side, you're committing to actually building something great, but it also takes a lot of work and effort. The other thing I encourage you to do is, so when you think about voice agents, if you look at, for instance, what's on Alexa right now, you'll see a spectrum of stuff. You see entertainment, you see lifestyle, you see productivity, et cetera, et cetera. These are very much engagement-focused bots. What I'm focusing on this session is not that. I'm telling you how you can increase your revenue, get more users, and retain them. So on that note, what I recommend you do is think about your virtual assistants as either hunters or farmers. So a hunter versus a farmer, just think about a really, really star sales business development team. There are some people who are very, very good at bringing in new business. They have that skill set. They hook the user in, they advance the conversation, and then they create the sale at the end, right? They lead it to that very end point. And then there are folks who are really good post-sale. So after the sale is made, they're very good at customer service, they're very good at keeping the relationship warm, they're good at upselling. These two folks tend to have very, very different skill sets, right, to be good at those things. And the same thing with virtual assistants. So depending on what your business goals are, if you either want to build an assistant that actually gets users versus one that serves your current user base, that's an important distinction to make early on. Don't sign up for both, you will fail. It's very, very difficult to do. AI agents who are good are specialists, not generalists. Generalist is a Google Assistant, and Google is spending hundreds of millions of dollars and an entire arm and many years working on it. Can't beat that. But if you build specialists who are narrowly focused on the niche you care about, on the product line you care about, then you can actually be successful. So I'm going to give you an example of what a hunter is. We build hunters, that's what I do. And one example of it, I'll give the example of our product. So one of our AI agents is called Credit Card Helper, and it helps people find the best credit cards. And so it does a ton of data research. We look at everything from consumer financial, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to JD Power to Consumer Reports to 500,000 complaints to the Financial Protection Bureau to awards quality, etc. We just look at all of that data, and then based on a few questions we ask you, we match you to the best product. So there was a grad student I met on the Berkeley campus, and he said, hey, I was playing with Credit Card Helper. I'm like, great, give me feedback. And he's like, well, last year I was looking for a credit card, and it was on a Saturday afternoon, and I spent it an hour and a half. I opened 17 tabs up. This is the nightmare I was faced with. Hundreds and hundreds of products, all bells and whistles, right? And then read the fine print. Good luck if you don't have a finance, accounting, and law background, really trying to decipher the best product there, right? And finally, you might pick something, but 2 weeks later, you're at lunch with a friend, and they pull out a card, and it's much better than yours, right? They have all these travel miles and the best awards, et cetera, et cetera. And you're like, my gosh, I just spent an hour and a half looking for the best thing, and I still didn't get it. So Corey told me that he played with Credit Card Helper, and in a matter of like 2-3 minutes, we gave him the short list that took him an hour and a half to actually research himself. Because as Corey came in, it started asking him questions like, okay, well, you're looking for a credit card. Do you want me to Do you know a category? Do you want me to recommend like a rewards card or a cashback card? Or do you want me to help you find a card? And then I'll ask things like, what are your spending habits? Do you tend to spend on restaurants, groceries, gas, travel? Are there any banks you like or hate? Are you okay with paying an annual fee if you get some perks, etc.? So ask some qualifying questions, and then ultimately it matches you, and then you can deep dive on any of these cards. So any information you have to actually look up in like the fine print, you can just ask it. What's the APR in this card? Where's the late fee? What's the catch? It will just talk to you. It's like an expert friend. Like, that cousin, that very finance savvy cousin you have that you go through to say, hey, dude, I'm in the market for a mortgage. I don't even know where to start. I don't know what questions to ask, where I can find the best rate, which banks to go to. And this person just knows their stuff, and you ask them, you have a conversation. How much more convenient? And you can supplement that with your research, but how much more convenient? So the job of a hunter is to bring that user in, and then it nurtures them down the sales funnel. This is huge, because right now, I told you my background was in digital acquisition. I created marketing campaigns all day long, and essentially, what do you do with a campaign? You create this campaign, you create all these touch points, you bring people into, whatever the destination is, like a landing page with call to action. They drop off. Now you're chasing them with retargeting and remarketing and email and whatever, trying to bring them back, right? And you're hoping if you do this enough times, every time you give them more relevant information, you're addressing their concerns, and it results in a sale. You do this in one conversation with an AI agent, maybe two. So essentially, right there, a user comes in and says, hey, I'm not sure if this card's the best for me. Here are my concerns. You address that. You answer the question right there. You put them at ease. Whatever concerns was stopping them from making the purchase. The other powerful thing with a hunter that lives on a Google Assistant is that we are at a point where you can imagine it's 1998 again, and Google just came to you and said, hey, would you like the first spot on my platform? It's like being first position on web SEO. That's the environment we're in with Google Assistant. You can have the first spot. Would you like that? And where that becomes really important is at the core of AI is what? Data, right? Which means if you take that first spot and you build something really, really good, you're in first position, you get a lot of users, which means you get a lot of data, which means you train your agent, which means it becomes that much better than anybody else who's going to come after you. So, and Google does what strategically? They've always served the best user experience. So you start early, you have a huge advantage over anybody else that comes in that's really, really difficult to combat. The other thing with voice SEO is we see this in Google, we see this with Alexa, is that Alexa right now has big companies like Procter & Gamble and Unilever panicking because if you, let's give you an example. So let's say you're looking for toothpaste, right? And you've never ordered toothpaste from Amazon before, right? And you talk to Alexa and you're like, hey Alexa, I'm looking for some toothpaste or just some toothpaste. You know what she does more than half of the time? She will say, oh, you might like Colgate or Crest. What about Sensodyne? What about all these other brands? What if you are managing any of these other brands? Alexa completely blocked you, right? Because she gave her two recommendations to this user. And so, the former executive director of Amazon, right now working at e-commerce and Nestle, essentially mentioned, look, when it comes to voice, you're either first or you go home. Like you have to do, and so these companies, these big consumer packaged goods companies are spending a lot in voice. Same thing with Google Assistant. A good voice experience is not that you ask Google Assistant a question and it gives you 15 items like it would on a web search on screen. That's terrible. It can give you a couple, the rest will be displayed on screen, but that's like being on page number 2, and nobody goes there. When do you ever go to page number 2 of a search? So, really important to dip your toes into this now, which is why me and my team, we had our fancy cush jobs and gave it up to start the startup. The other thing that's really, really important is search. Web search was search 2.0. Voice search is search 3.0. What do I mean by that? It is bound by completely different rules. If you do a great, fantastic job at web search, good for you. New learning curve for voice search. Very different paradigm. So, which means you got to start in this early. And a lot of the advantage, so right now we are the #1 result served for Google for anyone searching for a credit card. It took a long time, it's a lot of experience. All of that experience from what we learned and playing on the platform, from our close relationship with Google and talking to them, from leading the voice dev community, we hold that close to our chest because, again, if you're going for just a handful of positions at the top, you don't want to give that up. So point is, you got to get on this. And a lot of this stuff isn't published, so you want to start, and learning and experimenting real quickly. So I'm going to give you examples of other types of virtual assistants, right? Again, these run the gamut of, with natural language processing, more or less of that, machine learning, etc. So this is Snap Travel. They're a startup. They, last year, they got an 8 million round in funding. They're just crushing it in this space. They're taking on the Expedias of the world. And so here's an example of an experience. So Snap Travel, let's say you go on their website, they'll say, all right, well, tell me what your check-in date is. I'm going to help you find a hotel. And so you give it your check-in date, how many people, and then you can either do it two ways. You can either give it your phone number, and so it'll start texting you, text message, right? Or it can communicate with you via Google Messenger, whichever you prefer. So, I gave it my number, and I'm just showing you screenshots of what happened on my phone. So I had some history with them, you see above, but basically it says, hey, all right, so you want to check in this date, that date, great, click on this link, and I'm going to help you find options. And it starts helping me find options. And so they're competing. Don't look at these prices. This was screenshots as of like yesterday. That's why the hotel costs are so high. But they compete on price. So, you can find really low prices here. And so you could just basically scroll, and at any point you can either ask it questions right there, or you can talk to an agent. They have that available too. You could look at the map of the entirety of where you're going and see the price discrepancy. You could filter, etc. So it has some of these app capabilities in it, but you can simultaneously talk to it. And so let's say I'm filtering whatever, somebody knocks on the door and I have to leave, right? And I get out of it. So I left. What happens after? They send me a text message. Come back. And if it's Facebook Messenger, same thing. What if this was a website? How many retargeting display ads you're going to throw after somebody to try to get them back? And it's not even directly to that person. This is now very intimate. It's in my phone. It's like somebody's texting me. Huge power. Right? Another one that's doing really well. So Levi's saw a 7% increase in sales just by adopting this. 7% is huge. Like, how many of your pages are you going to modify? How many images are you going to update? Like, what are you going to do to just instantly increase your revenues by 7%? It's a big deal. So you're on the Levi's website, and there's the entire website available, but then they have their virtual assistant there that you can chat with. So you come to it, and let's say you don't want to look on their website. Sometimes these clothing websites are overwhelming, right? Where I go to find the shoes, the pants, whatever, what I want. And they make the experience like as if in a store. So what's a good experience when you go into a retail store? The agent says, hey, can I help you find anything, right? A good experience is not one that, oh, welcome, please go figure out the layout of our store, which is what we do with websites, right? In this case, the bot here says, hey, what can I help you with? And so let's say I'm looking for, jeans. All right, good. Men's or women's jeans, big broad category. Women's jeans. Okay, do you want a tight fit or fitted jean, etc.? And they have, you can see there's more options to the right that I can go through. So I say, yeah, I want fitted jeans. All right, do you want high, medium? I can make that selection. And then stretching your jeans, yes or no, and then ultimately it gives me a set of results. For me to go figure this out, I want high jeans that are fitted, that have stretch in them. It'll take me a while to figure out where this stuff is. So right here, it just gives it to me right there. No wonder, 7% increase in revenue. Huge. I mentioned to you in a couple earlier slides that they're hunters and they're farmers. So I'm going to give you an example of a farmer. So Bank of America created Erica. Anyone at Bank of America here? No. Okay. Well, they created Erica, which is a virtual assistant that is embedded in their mobile app. You can talk to it, and it helps you do a few things. So for instance, you can ask it for your balance. Erica, what's my balance? Erica, when's my next bill due? Erica, I just lost my card. Put a hold on it right now. Stuff that you would have to call in otherwise or go check online. You can just talk to it and it will give you that information. Erica, transfer money to, Bob. You just tell it, and it does it for you, like a true assistant. Here's the interesting thing about Erica. 1 million of Bank of America's users have Erica now, and they are raving about it. They cannot believe how much easier their life has become, because before they had to call a bank, go into the bank branch, figure it out on the app, whatever, where it is. Now you just talk to it and it gives them the answer. So, we are in the data strategy track, and it's fitting because, again, at the core of AI is data. But here's, besides the training component of the data, here's what's really important that you're going to get with any virtual assistant that you build. It becomes a data gold mine. So imagine if a user comes to your website, right? So say the user is Google searching for something. Google at this point is your friend, right? Because it's directing the user to your website. As soon as that user is on your website, Google is now your enemy. Because if you leave one question unanswered or one concern addressed or whatever, they go back to Google in the arms of all of your other competitors, right? So with an AI agent, this virtual assistant, let's say it lives on your website or lives in a Google Assistant, as people come in, they start talking to it. They ask it their questions. I don't care how much heat mapping you do and how much Google Analytics you look at and all the data analysis that you do. Nothing replaces a user telling you organically, out of a focus group, right? Because their bias is there too, tells you what they're looking for. And now, not only are you training your agent based on what people are looking for, now you can basically update all of your digital assets based on what people actually care about. Because we're playing a guessing game, and we're using a ton of data to optimize, our guesses and make sure that we're constantly adjusting what people want. But nothing beats someone telling you, hey, this is what's preventing me from buying from you right now, or this is what I need to know. And then you can have the agent answer it, you can update all of your assets, so it addresses it right there. So hugely powerful to just capture data from your users. Another important note to think about when it comes to virtual assistants is that a virtual assistant essentially is a personality. It is the embodiment of the third dimension of your brand. It has a temperament, it has a personality, it has a voice, it has a tone, it makes you feel something. So when you come and speak to a virtual assistant, you're speaking to something that addresses you a certain way, maybe charming, maybe, maybe direct. You give it a personality that aligns with your brand, right? But essentially, it's your company, it's your brand coming off the screen because now you're talking to it. It's like, some people you talk to on the phone and their voice, sounds like hot chocolate. It's just really soothing. And they're just really charming on the phone. It just makes you feel really, really good. That's the power that these things have because they have words and you can give them voice. And then it'll have a personality based on, again, what aligns with your brand. So essentially, it's somebody jumping off screen to help your end user. Ignore the shark over there. So to give you examples of personality, have you seen Iron Man? Iron Man's AI assistant was Jarvis, right? Jarvis was a very sophisticated Englishman. He was very smart. He was very charming. He was very polite, but he was also sarcastic, right? So his personality, just watch a clip on YouTube of Jarvis, just hear him talk, and you feel him right there. just based on tone of voice and what he says. So huge feelings you can evoke in people with these virtual assistants. In contrast to Jarvis, there was Samantha from the movie Her, right, with Joaquin Phoenix. And essentially Samantha is very warm. She's very playful, she's very loving, she's very caring, and very, very different personality. Watch a clip of that, you feel something different by just listening to her and what she says and how she says it. So a lot of power in these. So essentially what you have, the capability you have with these virtual assistants is not only to functionally help your customers and your end users, but you're now helping them, you're making them feel something good about you, feel something good about your brand, so that it's a good experience. You acquire them and you retain them this way. So I thought it'd be fun to share kind of some live transcripts that we've seen. So we've interviewed over 940 users. We have over 300,000. We analyze over 1 million transcripts of these bots. But I will tell you that your users will push your technology, and as they use it more, they will continue to push it. And it's interesting to see how they interact with a virtual assistant. So people are very curious about virtual assistants, right? So they'll ask it things like, who made you? Do you have a birthday? Because they start responding to it as a personality, right? It's talking to them. It's like their friend chatting with them. It'll ask it to predict stuff because they're seeing this thing as smart, right? So I'm going to ask it if it can predict some things about me, some things about the world. And then the other interesting thing that we see, and it puts a smile on my face when I see this, is that because people are interacting with a personality, sometimes they get very emotional about the interaction. And you see this in all the transcript. This is organic, so I'm not making this stuff up. This is stuff I've actually copy and pasted. So let's say virtual assistants like apps, like websites, a bug may occur. With AI agents much more because it's more complicated. Let's say some bug is there, or you haven't trained your agent to answer a specific question. People will say something like, hey, did you not hear me? I said this 5 times. Like they're getting frustrated with something that presumably doesn't have emotion. Or, get out of here, I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's not a person, it's like a computer, right? But there's some emotional engagement that happens there, which tells you how powerful these things are. So I'm going to make kind of the last point here, and this is important. So this is Gartner's hype cycle. With every technology, you will see this. That basically, technology will go through a cycle like this where if you see at the peak, that's where all the hype is, right? So a lot of products come out, people are very excited, but they're not that good. And virtual assistants right now are over here. And what you want to do is when you're on this section, you want to start building. So up here is what this year and the previous year has been. A lot of PR plays. You'll see companies that said, hey, we created an Alexa skill or Google action, but if you play with them, they're not that good, right? They frustrate people. And not that much investment went in them, but the tools are free, so people make them. The tech team and the innovation team gets excited about new technologies. They start making stuff, not realizing really the amount of commitment you need to put in to make an actual virtual assistant. So essentially, now is the time to build, and it's the time to build really, really good ones. And to build a really, really good virtual assistant, you need a cross-functional team. So I can't tell you how many partners, how many companies we've seen that started virtual assistant projects and just stopped because they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. That you need the digital folks, you need engineering, you need copy, you need creative, you need an entire team that as an engine is getting this toddler agent and growing it and training it for it to become really, really good. So if you want to make something, commit to it and give it support so you can make something great. And it's a huge differentiator to any other business because if you do a good job, you're just going to make people's lives so much more convenient, they'll flock to you. But it requires commitment, and it can't be a half-hearted approach. But now is the time. I said earlier, almost half of all mobile searches are going to be in voice in 2020, and that we're at a point where the train has left the station. Like, it's time to hop on the bandwagon now. Otherwise, you're going to see this tsunami of behavior come, and we're just not addressing it. And people are going to talk to their phones. Well, they start a conversation into their phone, and then we're going to give them websites. Super frustrating. I started a conversation because I wanted to talk, and now you're giving me a website to read and articles? No, talk back to me. So that's the opportunity you can have, and essentially offer that in a good way, and you differentiate yourself from anyone else who's in the market. And if you do it early, you get the data advantage. That's the hugest part. Okay, that brings me to the end of my talk.